Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I'm Gladys Kelunda, the product manager for PICUS in TRINEXIA. So TRINEXIA Africa is a value-added distribution, providing top solutions within cybersecurity and digital forensic technologies. We have a very strong partnership with the top vendors in the industry to provide this security solution to both public and private sector enterprise across African region through a selected network of specialized resellers. I'm excited about today's session, which we are collaborating with our leading vendor, PICUS. So PICUS technology is a pioneer of breach attack simulation, which enables organizations of all sizes to proactively strengthen their cyber resilience through automated security validation. In today's topic, we're going to discuss about how to elevate your security operations and reduce your threat exposure. Did you know that according to the industry studies, that only 22% of organizations are highly confident that their security controls actually work the way they should be? So the 78% is very scary. So in today's session, we'll be able to understand how we shall be able to have all the organization reach the 78%. Today's session will be recorded and the webinar will be available after the session. So today I'm delighted to say that on the call, we do have Mr. Tarek, who is the Regional Sales Director for PICUS, who has been in the industry for over a decade. So it's a really exciting space because he'll be sharing with us some insightful technologies on the industry. And we also have Dan, who is the channel manager for PICUS, and Mata, the senior sales engineer. Without any further ado, I'll welcome Mr. Tarek, and kindly, if you have any questions, let the session be as interactive as possible. You can kindly ask, and you can also post the questions on the chat box, which we shall be monitoring. So welcome, Mr. Tarek.
Thank you very much, Gladys, for this introduction. Really appreciate it and looking forward for this interactive session. So I think let's start initially by getting through a poll to understand the audience sense when it comes to the security operation and how confident they are. So if I can ask to roll out the poll. I don't know, are we able to see the poll or?
Yes, we are. We've got some good results coming through at the moment.
Quite interesting results so far. Very good. So it's quite interesting to see like the top priority, it comes into the quantifying of the security effectiveness. And that's in practice really aligned with what the industry says in terms of the feedback when a research is done in that regard. So based on the research done last year with PICUS Security among organizations who operate within the cybersecurity industry, is that most of the organization, they struggle in terms of fighting the increasing amount of cybersecurity attack they're facing. And these attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated, day by day, and the threats putting more challenges for the organization in order to build their defenses and capabilities in a more effective way in order to combat these attacks. What's also interesting is that almost 80% of the organization, they say they are not confident with their security control. They are not sure that the huge amount of investment that is being allocated and is done in terms of people, resources, processes, and even tools is really achieving the outcome that they are expecting within the industry. And finally, is that 60% of the organization that are really seeing that the pen testing activities that they are doing is not really achieving the outcome that they're looking for, because it's becoming more a snapshot in time in terms of their security posture. And the next day after they conduct these activities, they started to see more and more, threats and exposure that they're seeing. due to either updates within the existing platform or misconfiguration that can happen afterwards and so forth. Not to mention the challenge of acting on the result of the pen testing that has been added and activated within the industry. So it's quite interesting to see that actually the poll is really aligned in that regard. But let's take it to the next step and see even your feedback when it comes to the SOC operation. So if we can pull the second poll question, that would be great. Interesting to see more and more organizations, they are using pen testing activities in order to evaluate their security posture within the organization.
Yeah.
Over 2/3 of the responder are responding in this way. Matar, what do you think about the feedback so far?
Yeah, actually, I think it's quite expected. Pen testing and vulnerability scanning are the most common ways that organizations would do, and these are the oldest techniques as well. Red teaming is a little bit newer, and not everybody does them regularly. Some people would do it, of course, but not as regular as pen testing and vulnerability scanning, which shows that regulations play an important part, because vulnerability scanning and pen testing are obviously required by most regulations and central banks and other regulations. So of course, it's such a result is quite expected.
Very interesting, very interesting. So let me share then an additional insight on the research done by PICUS. So when we engaged with organizations to explore their feedback in terms of the SOC operation and the challenges they're facing, it's been quite interesting to see that only 40%, almost 40% of the attacks that the organization face are actually being logged within their existing technology that's supposed to log all these attacks in order to provide the alerts and the capability for the team to be act on these attacks that they're facing. And what's also interesting is that only 16% of these attacks are really triggered and alerted for the security team to be able to act on in that regard. And that's by itself, it provide a major challenging point for the blue teaming and the red teaming within the organization in order to improve their detection capabilities and prevention capabilities to be able to be at the forefront of detecting these sophisticated and increasing type of attacks. And that's, according to what we see on the research, that falls into three main categories that they face. The first one is the visibility of these attacks, because their existing technology either lacks the ability to collect these logs, or because of the misconfiguration in terms of collecting these logs for the existing tools being an EDR technology or a SIEM technology, that result of lacking the ability to generate the right alert for the security team to be able to start to act on these attacks. The second, feedback we got is that the assurance and the confidence on the tools that they're currently using. They believe that, currently on average, there is more than 30 different technology security teams are currently working on in order to secure their organization. With these huge amount of technology they're working on, it creates its own challenges in terms of how to work with these tools, how to master it and be able to generate the maximum value of these tools, as well as close any gap related with these different technology that exist. And finally is the staffing and recruiting and retention of the SOC team, because it tends to be a high pressure and demanding type of work. We see a high number of burnout within security analysts who are operating within a SOC operation. And these are the main three primary factors that we saw within the cybersecurity operation centers that the organization are facing today. I don't know, Matar, what do you think from your experience working previously in that sectors? Where do you see also additional challenges and insight within that part?
Yeah. Actually, one of the main things, so according to many surveys, that a typical security analyst or a SOC analyst would get around 4,000 alerts per day. So imagine yourself like you go to work every day, you log into the different platforms, different technologies that you're using, and you see more than 4,000 kind of alerts and incidents that are generated by your different SOC tools that you have. Obviously, quite overwhelming, and to be able to filter out those that matter. And of course, out of these, that would be like 80% of them would be like false alerts, and only quite a few of them would need like extra validation to be able to really understand that these are related to some serious attacks or potential threats. So yeah, obviously quite an overwhelming. And if you look at the threat landscape, there are new threats, new techniques all the time. As a SOC analyst, you need to be always on top of the latest threats, latest techniques that are used by the attackers, to be able to know what you're really looking for when you look into the different logs and different alerts that you get on your SOC tools. And we've, as per the poll, like people would do things like penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, maybe red teaming, some here and there, to be able to do some self kind of assessment to be able to see that. But the problem with these kind of things is that when you do a pen test, for example, you're limited by the resources that you use, and you're also limited by the time that you have and the scope, of course. So if you have more time, more people to do the pen testing, you'll have better results. But obviously, that's not always the case. Usually, the pen test would last for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months at maximum. And it will not be enough to be able to test all of the different threats and the latest threats in the market. So obviously that's quite big challenges for any SOC. And Tariq, while we go to the rest of the presentation, I think we will see how PICUS can change that game and help the SOC team actually operate in a better way.
Appreciate that, Matar. So just one of the interesting topics that I wanted to shed light on, a couple of years ago, there is a new concept emerged, which they call it the NSA problem. The NSA problem, which shared the challenge of that, because of they're collecting huge amount of data, it's becoming more challenging to analyze these data and be able to act on these data. How relevant do you see this challenge currently faced by SOC operators and SOC provider in that aspect?
Yeah, so basically there are two things that there is the awareness and there's the knowledge, right? So there are known knowns, and there is also the unknown unknowns. And obviously the most terrifying part is the unknown unknowns, right? So you don't know what you're looking for, and you have detections of threats that are completely unknown to you. You have no way of understanding what's going on. So obviously you'll be completely oblivious to whatever technique is going to be used by the attackers. And what you should be looking forward to is that you need to make sure that you have better knowledge and better awareness of the latest threats. We always say that why do we follow the MITRE ATT&CK framework, for example? We follow the MITRE ATT&CK framework because it allows us as customers, it allows us as security analysts to be able to understand and know the latest threats in the market, the different types of techniques and tactics that are used by the APTs and the adversaries, and we will see how PICUS is really built around that. When you see there is a new ransomware in the market, we have seen the first poll that people said that they are really worried about getting caught out by a new threat, right? So you hear out in the news that there is a new threat in the market. What would you do? You try to look into the web, into the internet, maybe talk to some of your security vendors, try to gather as much information about that threat, and then try to find if your controls and if your environment is actually immune to that kind of threat or not. And that's how PICUS is trying to change the game, that we update our threat library on a daily basis. We give you access to these latest TTPs and latest threats in the market, and also give you the ability to test them in your environment against your own controls and to be able to decide. So obviously the unknown unknowns are the most important part of that equation, and PICUS would help us with just that.
I'd appreciate it, Matar. But also, like adding onto that, like a new terms have recently started to emerge, which we called it detection engineering. Can you shed more light on what is detection engineering and how it's relevant to the SOC operation?
Yeah. So obviously, I have talked to many SOC consultants and SOC analysts over the years, and one of the biggest challenges that they have is how do we know that if our detection is working as is supposed to work, right? We have obviously different tools. I have my SIM, my EDR, maybe XDR tools, source systems. There are so many different tools that are used inside of the SOC. I obviously had my own incident response policies as well. But when it comes to detection, it's really about be able to know if I'm able to cover the different threats and the different techniques that are used by the attackers. So detection engineering is really about two things. The first one is, do I have the right logs? That's the first question that I should ask myself. I've seen so many customers that they will maybe not collecting the right logs. Maybe they are not collecting logs from the endpoints or some of the key security controls that they have in their systems. And obviously, maintaining those log sources is not an easy task. It seems simple, but it's not at all. It's much of hard work. Every SIM would have a different way of working, of course, but these connectors or loggers that connect the logs and collect the logs might go faulty and go unnoticed for quite a long time. To be able to have that visibility, understanding what are the logs that I'm collecting, what are the log sources that I have at the moment. And when you have the right logs, then you need to look at the next step. All right, so my SIM should be smart enough to be able to correlate those logs and to be able to generate quality alerts, right? So to be able to correlate between, for example, an incident that or a log that I get on my firewall of unauthorized access, for example, and then I can see some command and control that is going on, and I can see that from my proxy. And maybe I can see a detonation of a specific payload on the endpoint. So all of these actions can be correlated with each other with the right correlation rules to be able to give a context of such a threat, and obviously map them to the MITRE attack as well. So to be able to generate those high quality alerts is not an easy task. And even and if you ask also SOC analysts about those correlation rules, how do you write them? Do you use Sigma rules, for example? Obviously, most of them do. But the thing is that even if you write the correlation rule, how do you know it's actually working? So some people would have existing correlation rules that they think they are supposed to detect, for example, let's say privilege escalation kind of attack. But do they really know for sure that this is the case? That's also quite a big concern. So to be able to maintain those detection rules, making sure that they are working perfectly is not an easy task. And that's the kind of challenge that every SOC is facing at the moment.
And Matar, one of the main points that been mentioned on the poll on how organizations are confident with their security control, and this where a new segment within the cybersecurity sectors has emerged, as known as the breach and attack simulation, or what even recent analysts started to include it part of the continuous threat exposure management. So, what is really breach and attack simulation, or the BAS?
Yeah, so breach and attack simulation is simply around validation of your prevention and detection layers, right? So every SOC, every customer has invested a lot of money into these controls, NG firewalls, IPSs, web application firewalls, proxy, the list goes on. And on the detection layer as well, you have the SIM, the EDR, maybe XDR tools as well that have been invested in and customers have invested in. And the question is, are these controls configured in the right way? We're not saying that one technology is better than the other and one vendor is better than the other, but the question is it really blocking the threats? That's the question that everybody should ask. There are other criteria that people might think of when choosing a specific vendor, for example, like their support, maybe the easiness of using the GUI. All of these are absolutely important, of course. But when it comes to the main work, the main function of that control is the main concern, of course. So breach and attack simulation is simply around running those threats against your prevention layer and detection layer and see if in real life, by simulating real threats and real payloads, if these controls will be able to block or detect the different types of attacks. So in PICUS, what we do is that we have a threat library. That threat library is maintained by our red team, is being updated on a daily basis. So updating it with the latest threats. So if you hear, for example, there's a new ransomware in the market, or maybe that someone in the industry or in your country was hit by a specific ransomware, all you need to do is just go to PICUS threat library, search for the attack, and you'll find it into our threat library because we just update it on a daily basis. And then you simply run that attack. And when you run that attack, you only you will validate it against your prevention tools. So you'll see if the attacker would try to infiltrate through the network or through the email, if your email gateway or NG firewall is going to actually be able to block such a threat. And when the attack reaches the endpoint and it tries to execute itself, we will also tell you if your endpoint security tools, maybe your endpoint protection or EDR, will be able to block or detect them or not. And from a detection perspective, of course, we would do pretty much the same thing, and we will look into your SIM, your XDR, your EDR, and see if there are any logs or alerts generated by such a threat, and to be able to highlight that to you and tell you which attacks are detected. So that's in summary, and how the breach and attack simulation concept is about. Sorry.
So Matar, organizations for the last couple of years have been building their SOC operation. They've invested millions of dollars in terms of building tools, processes, and even training people to do that. Even some of the organizations, they built their own SOC in order to offer it as a service for their client, as a managed service for their clients. So what's your advice and recommendation on how they can really improve their detection and the outcome from these technology in order to achieve the maximum output and value of these operation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tariq. So basically, there are so many things to be done. Of course, you need to invest on the people that you have in your SOC to be able to for them to be able to have the maximum effectiveness that they can provide. So any SOC would be around three things. Sorry, there is people, process, and technology. So obviously, you need to invest in those people and also have the right processes implemented. But then comes the most difficult part, which is the technology. And when it comes to technology, there are a couple of things that we can think of, right? So I think one of the most important bits is to identify the blind spots. Find out where are the gaps. Am I collecting the right logs? Do I have the right visibility? Am I missing something inside of my environment? That's the first question. So because if you don't have visibility, it's just all of the other factors will be reduced to zero, right? And then you also need to operationalize the MITRE ATT&CK framework. The MITRE ATT&CK framework, as I've just said, is quite a unique and very useful kind of framework. It helps you to think like an attacker, and it also helps you find the different techniques that are used by the attackers to be able to operationalize it. It's not just by saying that like static kind of mapping to say that, all right, I have this rule, it should be able to block this attack. No, it should be operationalized, meaning that it should be put in action to be able to really run that specific attack and to be able to see what's going to happen in real life. So some tools can provide you with this kind of mapping of the MITRE attack, for example, like a SIM, right? So a SIM would say that this correlation rule, it maps to that specific TTP, and you might think it's fine, but is it really the case? It needs to be tested. It needs to be put into action, not just static mapping. And obviously, as you go further, you should be able to, once you do that, you should be able to reduce the number of false positives and also reduce the number of fake alerts that you get, because if you're overwhelmed with fake false positives, it would just consume your time and your SOC time, and it will obviously decrease the efficiency of the overall of the SOC. And one of the biggest challenges as well is the mitigations, right? So you see that you have a specific threat and you are worried about it, and you know that you're not able to block. How do you mitigate it? Do you have a way to implement these mitigations quickly, or is it time consuming for you? How much time does it take? Does it take a few minutes or a few hours, maybe a few days, maybe a few months? Because we have seen all of these scenarios that, for example, I'll tell you that according to surveys, it takes around 100 days to patch a critical vulnerability, right? So you have to find ways around that, find quicker ways to reduce that risk. If you have some vulnerabilities in your systems that you are unable to patch or unable to fix at the moment, maybe you have a vulnerability in a web application and you need to modify the source code of the application itself. All of these makes it very, very difficult and and slows the SOC operation down. So you need to have ways to implement quicker mitigations and to be able to depend much more on your security controls and making sure that they are able to block the different threats, and to be able to find ways to implement that in a quicker way.
It's easier said than done, so I would really appreciate to go through the demo so who can understand it. But before that, let me provide just a quick overview on PICUS platform. So PICUS platform, we've built a platform that can help the organization in their journey for the continuous threat exposure management in order to support into that process. So we've built a modular platform that can be deployed as a cloud or as an on-prem or even an air-gapped environment to address multiple use cases. We're very well known in terms of the breach and attack simulation, in terms of simulating the attacks within the environment to make sure you're able to validate the efficacy of your security control. We do have the automated pen testing module that focus into running emulation within the production environment to be able to see if an insider attacker or if the attacker has managed to create an initial access or a breach within the organization, how they will be able to move laterally or escalate privileges, or what vulnerability they will be able to exploit in order to reach to the crown jewel of the organization. We've discussed a little bit about the detection engineering. We'd love to see more about that on how to improve the efficacy of the SOC and improve the operation of the SIEM performance and the hygiene of all the playbooks that has been built within the platform. But also we provide the cloud posture assessment in terms of reviewing the configuration as well as the auditing for the cloud. So you become more assured on the risks that you have within the cloud operation, leveraging either AWS or Azure or GCP as a cloud provider. And finally, the attack surface management in order to have a single screen where you have full visibility on all the assets, processes, procedures, vulnerability within a single dashboard that is collecting the information from different technologies and tools within the organization. So you can have this assurance on closing the gaps of the assets that is available within the organization. But that's, take us to the next step on understanding exactly how PICUS can help achieve and improve the performance of the SOC. And in that purposes, I would leave it to Matar to walk us through the platform so we have a better understanding on how the technology would be able to operate and achieve the outcome that we've discussed today.
Thank you so much, Tariq. Let me share my screen. I'll just let me know if the screen is visible.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, perfect. So here is what the PICUS dashboard would look like. So when you log into PICUS, this is what you see. You see on the left-hand side, you have the prevention score, and you have the detection score on the right-hand side. So what this means is that in our demo environment, we have different controls implemented and different detection tools also implemented. Our preventive security tools are able to block 77% of all of the threats that we've simulated so far. And we have we are able to detect 65% of all of the threats. Why are these numbers important? Like, especially from a managerial perspective, if you're a SOC manager or a CISO, these numbers would be like KPIs for the SOC in general, KPIs for the information security team, because they reflect the current security resilience that you have. By really simulating those threats, you really understand how effective your controls are when it comes to prevention and detection. And you can see that here it shows that over the last 7 days, we have increased our security score by 7%, and we have increased our detection score by 10%. This is also something to take note of, that you're continuously evolving. As time goes on, you apply mitigations, you apply detection rules, which we'll see later in the demo, and you'll dramatically enhance your security scores, and to be able to show the real value and real return on investment when it comes to such prevention and detection tools. And if we scroll down a little bit more, we get to see the same thing, the prevention score and detection score, but we're able to see them over time. So here you can see this graph. It shows the evolution of the security score over time. For example, if I go to see the score over the last year, I can see that the score is going up and down, of course, because it's a demo environment. But in a typical customer environment, they would usually start with a low score, and over time, they would add more and more mitigation and see the enhancement of the security score over time. So they can generate a report that says over the last, let's say, 6 months, we were able to mitigate more than 6,000 threats. We were able to enhance our detections by 60%. We were able to enhance our preventions by 40%, and so on and so forth. And also one of the benefits of such a thing, and by the way, we're able to do that. We're able to show this graph in that way because we are continuous testing. Unlike the traditional penetration testing and let's say a red teaming exercise, which is a point-in-time assessment. That's something that you do once, maybe once a month or once a quarter. But PICUS is a continuous testing product, meaning that we keep running the threats all the time. We are validating the security controls all the time. And the main benefit of that is that you get to see whenever there is a significant drop. So you see here, this yellow dot says significant drop. So sometimes a score would drop significantly all of a sudden. Why would that be? Why would that happen? It could happen because of two reasons. Maybe because on that specific day, we have simulated some new threats, right? And these new threats were not blocked or not detected by our controls. But the other main concerning reason could be because of misconfigurations. Maybe someone switched off a policy or changed some kind of rule on any of the security controls, and that can have a negative impact on that. So as an example, like during one of the POCs, we had like 70% score when it comes to network infiltration attacks. So the firewall was able to block around 70% of all of the threats. And just the next day, within like less than 24 hours, the score dropped to 35%. So when we looked at the results of the attack, we found out it was because of, we found out that all of the HTTPS attacks were not blocked. However, the HTTP were still blocked as they are. So obviously that points out to the SSL inspection policy. So we asked the firewall team to check the SSL inspection policy, and it was actually switched off. So such a scenario is very common. Misconfigurations happen all the time. So PICUS can give you an alert. It can send you an email right away once we see a significant drop, sending you an email notification telling you that we can see a significant drop in the security score. So obviously you can be notified as early as possible and to be able to take action against it. Then we have the different modules inside of PICUS, and then we can see, for example, the network infiltration, web application attacks to validate the WAF, of course, the network infiltration to validate the NG firewall, the IPS, maybe the proxy, email infiltration to validate your email gateway. And then we have also 3 flavors of endpoint like Windows, Linux, and macOS. And finally, we have the exfiltration attacks and the URL filtering, where we can validate your URL filter that you have maybe on one of your controls like the proxy or the NG firewall by trying to visit lots of malicious URLs and see if your URL filtering will be able to block such a connection or not. So these are obviously all modular. So every customer is different. Every customer would have different controls. So you can pick and choose which of these modules. You can choose just one or all of them, depending on your use cases. What's also quite important on this dashboard is that you get to see the security score of each individual control. So here we can see all of the controls that we have deployed in this demo environment, and we can see the efficacy of these controls. For example, we can see that Cisco Firepower is operating at 87%. We have Palo Alto, F5 is operating at 90%, and so on. So we can see each and every control, and that can help us compare between different controls. If you're doing a POC for like a couple of new vendors, you're able to put them side by side and to be able to compare them and see which one is more effective when it comes to blocking of the different threats and different attacks. And finally, we come to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which we said that one of the key factors is that you need to operationalize it. And in PICUS, we have more than 23,000 payloads. All of the 23,000 payloads, and it's just growing all the time because we were adding more and more threats. But all of these 23,000 payloads are all mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So you're able to see such a heat map to tell you for each tactic how many techniques are simulated, and out of these techniques, what's the prevention score and what's the detection score. So this is what we mean when we say we need to operationalize it. So on the defense evasion side, for example, we can see that there are we have simulated 14 out of 35 available techniques. We were able to prevent 36% of them, and we were able to detect 75% of them, right? So by doing that, you will know the gaps. You will know which techniques you fail to prevent and which techniques you fail to detect, and then you know what you need to do. There is always that kind of problem, is that how do we go forward? How do we keep enhancing things? So this is what you need to do. Some people would do like a gap assessment, for example, which is basically a service that's time consuming, is costly, but PICUS would give you the ability to find these gaps and be able also to provide recommendations on how you can actually mitigate and eliminate those gaps over time. But you might think, all right, how do we use the product? Is it complicated to run such a tool? There are obviously the pen testing tools, they have a bad reputation of being difficult. They need a pen tester to use it. But PICUS has changed that game entirely. And that was one of the key things, I think, in the minds of the founders of PICUS, is that we need to make it accessible. We need to make it easy to use for everyone. And we will see that it's quite easy. So all you need to do is just go to threat templates. This is where you can find different categories of threats. For example, the emerging threats, the new threats that were added recently to the platform. So you can choose which of these templates you want to run at any point in time. For example, you can see something here like the Ivanti vulnerability that was exposed, I think 2 weeks ago now, and we've added I think on the very next day was inside of our threat library once it was published. And we have more and more threats as well. You can see the Log4j, Log4Shell kind of vulnerabilities and threats. It makes sense to have in a separate category all of the emerging threats, because the newer the threat is, the more difficult it is to be blocked and detected. So we have it in a separate category. You have a dynamic template here that gets updated automatically that has all of the emerging threats that were added over the last year. So you can run this simulation every day to make sure that you're covering the latest threats all the time. We have another category here called Suggested by PICUS Labs, which is also quite nice, which was actually built by our team in PICUS Labs. And these contains, for example, the trending ransomwares in the market, maybe the top 10 MITRE attack techniques that are used by the attackers, or maybe threats that target specific regions like Africa, or maybe specific industries like the banking industry or the oil and gas and government and so on. So we have all of these templates that you can use, and it's completely at your disposal. So you choose which of these that you want to run, how frequent you want to run them. So it's completely under your control. One of the most common kind of templates as well is called security control rationalization, which is basically a holistic kind of template, right? So if you want to simulate all of the network attacks, you go to the IPS, IDS, and firewall full coverage. That would include all of the network attacks that we have in our threat library, and you'll be able to just simulate. And it's also dynamic, meaning that it gets updated automatically. You don't need to worry about the latest threats. Don't need to go every time to the platform, search for the new threats. It will be just updated automatically and added to the threat library right away. Then we have the WAF also, which is basically contains all of the web application attacks and so on. So we have this one is for DLP or data exfiltration. This one is for endpoint attacks, like for different operating systems like Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. And we have also email attacks with full coverage kind of template as well. And when you click on any of these templates, you get to see the threats inside of that template. For example, here we can see all of the web application attacks, and we can see that for each threat, it contains a number of actions. For example, here you can see that this one, for example, has 27 different actions. This one has 4 actions. This one has 23 actions. So what's an action? An action is simply an individual payload or an iteration of the attack. So here you can see all of these boxes. Each one of these boxes is a different payload, right? And if you click on any of these boxes, you'll get to see more details about the threat. Like what's the action ID itself? What's the release date of the threat? What kind of phase it is? Is there a CVE reference or CWE reference? What's the OWASP reference as well? External references for more information. You also see what kind of system is being affected by such an attack. So here it's any dynamic application, a web application will be affected by such a threat. And it would be also add the description of the attack, like brief description on why it's important, how does it work, and so on. You also get to see the payloads. So if you're a pen tester, if you're a red teamer, you'd absolutely love it. You have the ability to copy these payloads. You're able to download them. You can modify the payload itself and build your own custom threads. And you can make use of this really nice tool that allows you to build your own custom threads. So you can choose whichever module you need. Just click on Start Building, and it will give you access to all of the payloads. So here, for example, we have 9,877 different payloads when it comes to network infiltration attacks, and all of them are here. You can simply modify them and just create a new custom thread, or you can simply create an action or create an attack from scratch. You can just build it from scratch, upload your own malicious code attack or vulnerability exploitation attack, and we will guide you through step by step on how to build it. But we know the lack of resources. We know that not every customer would have a pen testing team or a red teaming inside of the SOC. So if you are worried about a specific vulnerability or a specific threat, or maybe you find out that there is an APT that is actually targeting you at the moment, and you go to the threat library and you search for that specific vulnerability or specific attack and you don't find it for some reason, you can simply send us a request. Tell us that I need to build a threat for this kind of CVE, and the team would build it for you if it's exploitable, of course, and it will build it for you and add it into the threat library. So you just can use PICUS Red Team as an extended Red Team of your SOC, and we do that with all of our existing customers. And by the way, that comes with no cost whatsoever. All right. So what about how do we run the simulation? So as I said, we can choose whichever module that we need, whichever attack that we need, and just click on simulate now, and that's it. I choose the agent that I want to run the attack on, and just click next, and then click simulate now. That's how easy it is. Just takes literally seconds to run an attack. Once the attack is run, you're able to see the results from the simulations tab. So here you can see the latest threats that we've simulated, and you can see what was the prevention score and what was the detection score. Obviously, this one is waiting to be run. It has been scheduled, so it's just waiting to be run. And you can see the other threats as well, and you can see what was the prevention score and what's the detection score. So if we go to some nice example here, let's go, for example, like this one. This is a black bite ransomware, a very vicious ransomware that was quite active in the region. And here we can see that when we simulated that threat, we've simulated it on 3 different channels. Attackers would typically try to infiltrate using different ways. So here we try to infiltrate through the network and through the email. And if we go to the email here, for example, you can see which attacks, which emails are blocked and which emails are not blocked. So, for example, this is a variant 1. It's using RTF extension, and it was not blocked over the URL. However, the attachment, so it's pretty much the same variant, the same threat, but we try to infiltrate using 2 methods. So sending the file as an attachment or sending it through a URL. So attachment was blocked, which is great, but the URL was not blocked, which shows that the attackers would use different techniques in different ways and different variants to try to infiltrate. So that's the email. And then we go into the network also and try to infiltrate through the network. So maybe there are different variants as well, same variants, but now it's just over the network level. And we can see that most of them were blocked except for 1 variant that was not blocked. But it doesn't matter. If the attacker will find just 1 variant that is able to infiltrate, that means that they have achieved what they tried to do, which is the delivery, which is the attacker objective, right? So here's the attacker objective was achieved because the delivery of the malware was really achieved, and the malware has been delivered to the target system. And then once the delivery has happened, then we go into the actual endpoint threat, right? So here the actual malware is gonna be put into action. And here you'll see the different objectives the attacker has, what they are trying to achieve. So for example, there is the initial access. So here the attacker would try to execute .NET DLL. And try to just gain initial access into the machine, and we can see, of course, the result, if it was if it was blocked or not, if it was logged or not, and if it was alerted or not. So here the attack was not alerted, however, it was logged and detected and blocked. Sorry. And this is the kind of info that we get from QRadar. We can also switch to Splunk because we're using 2 machines, and you can see that there are different results. Some attacks are detected by QRadar, but not Splunk, and vice versa as well. But then the attack would go into the next phase, which is the execution, right? So here it's trying to execute a malicious payload. So it will try to use shell code injection, for example, create a mutex to try to gain access to network resources. It's going to use PowerShell, for example. It's going to try to go into discovery, try to gather system language using PowerShell. It's going to go into lateral movement by registry modification. Impact of the attack itself, like encryption of the file, deleting the shadow copies, and so on. So you now really understand how that kind of black bite ransomware would behave, and which actions are you able to block, which actions are you able to detect, and that's the optimum goal. But so far, that's really good so far. I am able to have visibility. I see which actions are blocked, which actions are not blocked. But what next? How do I stop these kind of attacks? All I need to do is to go to Mitigations tab, and here I can find preventions. So I can find preventions that I can apply to all of my controls. So I can see the different tools that I have. For example, let's say that Palo Alto is blocking 82% of the threats. There are 76 attacks that were not blocked. So all I need to do is just go to signatures, and there we go. I can find the signature that I need to add to Palo Alto. So all I need to do is just copy that signature ID, go to Palo Alto, paste the signature there. We talked about how important it is to be able to mitigate threats quickly, and that would literally take you a few minutes to be able to do so. And we can simply export a CSV file. This CSV file will have all of these signatures at once, and I just can copy and paste them into Palo Alto. And I can do the same for all of these other controls as well. If you have a question about which technology is supported, you can definitely reach out to us or TRINEXIA, and we can give you the list of supported vendors that we have. And we keep adding to these vendor alliances. We add more and more vendor alliances over time. What's even more important is the detections, right? So here we can provide you with Sigma rules. These Sigma rules are detection rules that you can apply in your SIM. So if you miss a specific threat, for example, this is a scheduled task. This is a benign, a kind of a native Windows tool, and it can be used by the attackers, right? So here we can see the correlation rules that we need to do. When you can see the exact details of the correlation rule itself. So here you can see all of the different, the query itself that you need to do, like the event ID that you need to look at, and all you need to do is just copy this correlation rule, add it to your SIM. We also tell you what kind of log sources that you need to have, maintaining the log sources if you remember. So that's also can be provided. PICUS will give you more than 500 of these correlation rules. It will give you ways to automate the validation of these correlation rules. So when you add the correlation rule, you can really run the simulation, and you can really tell if this correlation rule actually works. Are you able to really block or detect the scheduled task attack if it happens? So obviously quite substantial. Adding these 500 correlation rules, which we also keep adding more and more. I think there are more than 500 now. It's 526 at the moment, but you get the point. By doing so, you will be able to enhance your detections over time and preventions as well, and just enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of your SOC. Thank you so much. I hope I was able to give you a glimpse of the product. Obviously, there are much more, but if you're interested, please reach out, and we can definitely dig if you like. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Matar. Thank you very much, Matar. Really appreciate the demo. I know it's a quick one. For those who are interested to know more and dig deeper, feel free to reach to us, or our partners will be able to help in that regard. Coming to the partners, actually, leveraging SOC operation and managed services is one of the key offerings that usually organizations provide. And we've seen, some of the questions we received looks like from a partner's perspective who are looking to improve their operations and services. So that's why I would like to reach to Dan here, if you can share with us more insight on how PICUS engage with partners and how the alignment with TRINEXIA goes in terms of adding the value for the channel partners within the region.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tarek, and thank you, Matar, for the demo. So we operate in region via TRINEXIA, who's our distributor and our trusted value-added resellers and MSSPs. So PICUS is able to be deployed in customer environments in two ways. Either the customer themselves can own the license and manage the solution themselves. As you've seen, which Matar has taken you through, it's not a complicated product, and it's designed to make your life easier. Alternatively, where organizations may be struggling with certain resource or capabilities, then this is where some of our MSSP partners can then step up, and actually they can take the reins and use PICUS as a service. So our MSSP partners can actually add value to your organization, both evaluating whether you've got internal or external SOC environments, help you set your SLAs, but more importantly, improve your cyber resilience. So there's two ways normally organizations find out whether their existing security spend is effective or not. The first way is they're breached, which unfortunately is not where we want to be, or the secondly, we validate. So Tariq mentioned very early on in this webinar around the fact around continuous threat exposure management, continuous validation. So we can do that either internally with the existing customer, or we can do that through our MSSP partners to manage that for you.
Really appreciate it, Dan. Dan, thank you very much. And from Gladys, point of view, like how channel partners can operate and get access and have better knowledge on PICUS from your side.
Okay, thank you so much, Derek, for the question. Yeah, so we do operate through the channel model, whereby we have our key resellers, whereby you can come and grab registration on the partner portal. Once you do the registration, you're able to get the trainings. You need to do the technical and the sales trainings. And then also on that, you're able to get an NFR license where you can do demos to your partners and hold that access. And also with our sessions, we have sessions with our end users through our dedicated partners, whereby we have the session, we customize the solution for them, and we're able to go to even the POC and the demo for the end users to see how the solution works.
Really appreciate it, Gladys. Like, I think the challenge is that we're very limited in terms of time, but that's take us to, I think, to the last poll in our session today. So I've asked if the team can share the last poll of today so we can get the feedback on that. We're really glad to see like majority of the respondents saying that it's been a useful insight and information for the webinars today. We're happy to set up more detailed session for those who are interested. Please feel free to reach to our partners TRINEXIA or directly to us. We can help you in that regard. And we're looking forward to continue a joint journey together in terms of improving our security posture and be able to eliminate these attackers in a more proactive way than being reactive. So thank you very much from our side. Gladys, thank you very much for the support and continuous support we're having from our partners. And we're looking forward to work closely in this region.
Okay, thank you so much, Tariq and Tal, for the insightful presentation on the technology. I want to thank everyone who gave us their time. We really appreciate it. And in case you joined us later, so we recorded the session, so we shall be sharing the recording and that recaps everything we have covered on this session. And also we shall reach out to each and everyone individual on this session so that we can have sessions and we can have a deeper dive on how best we're able to collaborate. So thank you and do have a lovely day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.